Good morning. My name is Mark Anderson. I want to let begin by welcoming Dr. Holly Humphrey's family, friends, former colleagues, mentees, residents, and students. We are so grateful you were able to join us today to celebrate her life and legacy. The impact Dr. Humphrey had on the University of Chicago, all the colleague and trainees she advised, and medical education as a field is generally and genuinely immeasurable. And it would be impossible in the time we have today to fully capture the depth of that impact. But I want to open today's service by highlighting a few of the areas in which her ambition, generosity, and vision have made her a giant in the field. The first, I think all of you would agree, is mentorship. As many of you here can undoubtedly attest, Dr. Humphrey was an incredibly generous and effective mentor. She made time for all who sought her counsel, from medical students to residents to fellows to faculty member, and she treated each one as a colleague. She developed genuine connections with her mentees, keeping in touch with them as their careers evolved, and always remaining a source of advice, support, and professional wisdom. She cared deeply about the professional and scholarly development of health professionals and educators, helping to establish initiatives such as the Academy of Distinguished Medical Educators and the nation's first white coat ceremony here at the University of Chicago, which lives here today and really around American medical education. Before all this work, before she eventually took on this pivotal role to work nationally as the president of the Josiah Macy Jr. Foundation. Another theme is excellence and inclusion. Dr. Humphrey also believed sincerely that excellence and inclusion in medical education are not mutually exclusive and worked tirelessly to elevate both simultaneously at the University of Chicago. Under her leadership, the Pritzker School of Medicine rose to a place among the nation's most highly regarded institutions of medical education, where it remains today, elevating the caliber of students Pritzker attracts and graduates, and so making the world a better place. Simultaneously, Dr. Humphrey helped lead the development of invaluable programs that contribute to an environment of inclusive excellence. Among them, 2 summer pathway programs that have opened the door for so many highly talented students from a wide range of backgrounds to enter medicine and other STEM fields. Third theme is medical education scholarship. Dr. Humphrey possessed an ambitious vision for medical education as an important field of scholarship. In addition to the aforementioned Academy of Distinguished Medical Educators, she supported the development of educational leaders and scholars at the University of Chicago by creating Merit's Fellowship and Training Program, which is still thriving today with pathways for faculty and for residents. As a strong proponent of exceptional teaching, Dr. Humphrey established a teaching partnership with what is now Endeavor Health, opening up new opportunities for trainees to learn in different settings with different patient populations. Dr. Humphrey fashioned herself as a leading yet humble voice in medical education nationwide, and her scholarly vision helped push medical education research forward not just here, but across the country and beyond. For all of her tremendous contributions and impact, Dr. Humphrey was fittingly recognized earlier this month, in 2005, with the AAMC Award for Excellence in Medical Education. This is the organization's most prestigious award, given posthumously for the very first time. These are but a small window and preview of the legacy that Dr. Humphrey leaves us all. And we will hear more today about her personal aspects of her career, one that touched so many and will continue to reverberate for years to come. Today, we'll hear from many whose careers Dr. Humphrey influenced as former students, as colleagues, and mentees. Now I have the pleasure of introducing Dr. Vinnie Arora. Dr. Arora is the Herbert T. Abelson Professor of Medicine and the Dean of Medical Education at the Pritzker School of Medicine, fittingly occupying the role that Dr. Humphrey held for so long before leading the Macy Foundation. Dr. Arora first came to know Dr. Humphrey as a resident and later a chief resident during Dr. Humphrey's tenure leading the internal medicine program here, and has remained a mentee, collaborator, and close confidant of Dr. Humphrey's for more than 25 years. Dr. Arora?
Thank you, Dean Anderson, and welcome. Today, we are gathered in Rockefeller Chapel to celebrate one of the most loved leaders at the Pritzker School of Medicine, Dr. Holly Humphrey. While I wish we were not here today, it is actually fitting that we are. For so many years, some of you may know that this is the place where Holly stood, welcoming legions of new Pritzker students as they received their crisp white coats, and later speaking their names and place of future residency training with pride as they crossed this stage in academic regalia to receive their hood and go on to become resident physicians. She actually called these ceremonies the bookends of a student's time here at Pritzker, the first and last chapter of a future physician's story. And as you just heard, Holly's own story is deeply intertwined with the institution, the University of Chicago, from her days as a medical student, internal medicine resident, chief resident, pulmonary fellow, faculty member, to her transformative leadership as our internal medicine residency program director, and then later dean for medical education. She really defined what it was to be a citizen and a teacher and a doctor at the University of Chicago. As program director, I think many of our residency alumni who've gathered this morning would attest that she not only taught us how to doctor, she also cared for us. She listened to all of our problems, no matter how small. She guided us to reach our full potential, even as we faced challenges through the graph of the ups and downs of training that she often put up on the board. And when I say no problem was too small, I will say that somebody who here, as I was somebody who was not from Chicago, she even advised us to make sure we got boots and coats that were warm for the Chicago winter for those not from here. And then, as you have heard, as Dean for Medical Education, she was an advocate for ensuring that medical education remained a core valued mission of academic health centers at a time when it's very important that we do center medical education. She also believed that medical education was a science and it deserved the rigorous thought, just like all of the other missions here in our institution. And that is one of the reasons why she started a medical education fellowship, as well as co-led the creation of the Academy for Distinguished Medical Educators to expand scholarship in this area. Throughout her career, she worked tirelessly to create and expand pathways for students of exceptional promise who often did not have the generational wealth or advantage often needed to enter this career and become a doctor here or elsewhere. Needless to say, I don't have to tell you that these legacies are palpable today. And of course, as you heard, she created traditions that endure. In 1989, Holly, along with the then Dean of Students, Norma Wagner at the time, helped lead the first white coat ceremony in the nation. For Holly, this ceremony was not just a formality, it was a moment of deep personal reflection for her. And I actually didn't, even though I knew Holly so well, it wasn't until after she went to the Macy Foundation and wrote about her experience that I learned even more. She shared that her earliest memories of a white coat were not of that when she was a student or a physician, but as a 9-year-old child when her younger sister was in a coma. And she wrote at the time on the Macy Foundation website, "For my family and me, the white coat was a symbol of hope, a symbol worn by the professionals of whose every word we clung as my sister struggled to live and nearly died with newly diagnosed diabetes." She goes on to reflect, "In this experience, I recognized that ceremonies and rituals, such as the one for the white coat, might be important for the trainee and faculty, just as they are important for the families as well as the patients." And that is why I learned so much, even just reading and preparing for this talk, about Holly. And that's the kind of person she was. You're constantly learning. I should also say that it was emblematic that I or none of us really understood Holly's pivotal role in this ceremony until she went to the Macy Foundation, because she was too humble to share that she actually started this ceremony here. These bookend ceremonies are where Dr. Humphrey gave important lessons, often quoting from her favorite authors. As many of you know, she was a voracious reader. And for those that have been to her home with Dwayne will certainly attest to all of the books on their bookshelves. So today, I will take the opportunity to share 4 key lessons for everyone that she often has imparted to all of us. And I'd like to thank several of you who contributed to these lessons. The first is always seek to de-escalate. When tension rose, as it often does in leadership roles or in medicine, Holly brought calm. True leadership for her meant lowering the temperature, not raising it, whether it be in front of the classroom in the BSLC for a Dean's brown bag lunch, or at a resident meeting in A700 where the chief residents were debuting new service rules, or in her meetings in her office or in the S100 Dean suite. She modeled grace under pressure, and she excelled at becoming that calming, centering force wherever she was. The second will be familiar to everyone. She would always take the high road, and she always did. Even in disagreement, Holly chose integrity and kindness. She showed us how strength can be still gentle but unflappable. For example, she did not shy away from giving you negative critique or feedback when you actually had a bad idea or were not doing something correctly. But she knew how to deliver this feedback adeptly such that you felt cared for. And that is something that I have truly valued learning from her. The third is ask yourself what you can learn. Holly was a quintessential lifelong learner who believed in staying curious. And that is the challenge. And she understood that every challenge and encounter, no matter how difficult it was an opportunity also for reflection and growth. And her curiosity extended to you personally as a person and as a human in front of her. She was always curious about your own life, learning about the people that she was constantly surrounded by, whether it be an applicant who she had just read their application on the train on her way in for residency interviews, or a faculty that she was meeting with to talk about their career. The last and final lesson is to show gratitude. Holly thanked people constantly, often, I should say, with these lovely handwritten notes in the most beautiful penmanship that I have seen that is just not characteristic of the medical profession. So she was truly superhuman. And she reminded us that gratitude connects us and kept us humble and enables us to realize our full potential. I know many of us looked forward to receiving those handwritten notes from Holly around the holidays. These were not just her teachings, they were her way of living. And even as she faced illness, Holly continued to role model grace and gratitude. To the very end, she remained a teacher and a healer for all of us. Here, where she herself marked so many beginnings and endings for others, we gather to celebrate another bookend, the celebration of her life. Her influence lives on in every student, resident, and colleague that she's inspired, and every patient touched by the physicians that she helped shape. So as we remember her today, let us all carry her lessons forward. When conflict arises, de-escalate. When tested, take the high road. When uncertain, ask what you can learn. And in all things, show gratitude. Yesterday, I just finished 14 days of inpatient service on general medicine with our residents and students, and these lessons, as I reflected last night, served me every day, just like they did when I arrived as an intern in Holly's program 27 years ago. Rest well, Dean Humphrey. I know your story continues through all of us and those who we all teach and care for. Thank you. Next, I would like to invite Dr. Dwayne Fullman, Dr. Humphrey's spouse and internal medicine residency program alumnus, to the podium. We are grateful to have him with us.
Well, I hope I can hold this together. I'm not optimistic, but I'll try. Finding words and summarizing Holly, knowing her for almost 50 years, has been difficult. Today marks the 1-year anniversary that Holly received that formidable CT scan that gave her her diagnosis. And I'm going to do my best to represent her. I met Holly in 1975, and we were assigned to be at the same lab bench at North Central College. What began as a close friendship became a lifelong bond, and we married in 1982. And then for 5 decades, we were best friends and partners in every sense of the word. So I'm going to try to let you learn about Holly from my perspective and sitting by her in the office for the last 20, 25 years. All of you know Holly was never comfortable talking about herself. She knew that her accomplishments were deeply intertwined with the people that she worked with, who encouraged her and collaborated with her. She wanted the focus to be on all of you and not on her. And it's also impossible to name everybody who was integral to Holly's career and friendship. So anyone that I don't mention, which will be many, please forgive me. So let's truly understand what happened. How did Holly get to U of C and what made her? And I think there were 2 hinge points that I'd like to start out with. Many of you know part of this. Holly grew up in a small dairy farm in rural Wisconsin. And her family lived near the poverty level, but they were content. Holly was hoping to be a musician and wanted to buy a flute. And her dad said, "We can't afford a flute." And eventually her dad sold a calf, which allowed them to buy a flute and a few flute lessons. She practiced endlessly, often in the car in the garage, and made it all the way to the Wisconsin Youth Symphony. But that changed when her sister Sally became ill. The local doctor attributed the weight loss to adolescent growth, and Holly sensed something different. Holly, detecting the fruity odor of ketones on her sister's breath, reviewed some health books in the house, ran to the front and said, "Mom, I think Sally has diabetes." That moment was a hinge point that altered her life. Still in high school, Holly helped her parents, neither of whom had finished high school, navigate a confusing, uncertain, and costly medical system. And despite their efforts, Sally died from complications of bypass surgery and a kidney transplant. Holly often recalled her mother writing $5 checks, multiple $5 checks, to slowly pay off the medical bills. Week after week, a $5 check. So that experience shifted Holly's calling from music to medicine and inspired her lifelong devotion to caring for others, especially those with fewer resources. Second hinge point. Holly studied biology and chemistry at North Central College, graduating at the top of her class, and entered medical school. As a Wisconsin resident, she initially went to the Medical College of Wisconsin, and I remained in Chicago. We wanted to be married and wanted to try to get to the same city. I had no options in Wisconsin. She had one option in Chicago. She found out there was one position available at the University of Chicago. Little did she know there were 100 applicants for that position. Her interview with Dr. Joe Seidhamel, the legendary and formidable dean of students whose picture adorns the walls of graduating classes somewhere in the hospital, took her took her into his office. The interview was grueling. The papers were all over his desk. There were yellow marks, exclamation points, red underlines. Brutal interview. And he's asked Holly about what she thought. And she said, Dr. Seidhamel, I think I could be at the top of the barrel. And Dr. Seidhamel came back to her and said, you know, Holly, I have serious reservations you even qualified to be in the barrel. And yet he did see something in her. He accepted her for that one position. And her life was never the same. Years later, Dr. Seidhamel told her that he had been testing her toughness and grit. Much later, when he passed away, the family asked Holly to speak at his memorial, a moment of grace and completion that meant a lot to her. So these two experiences were foundational to her. So, with the help of her dear friend, Dr. Julie Biller, who was a previous transferee, helped Holly facilitate her transition to the University of Chicago, and we were married a year later. But Holly wasn't sure what she would find. She was simply hoping she'd be in the barrel. But once she arrived at U of C, she immediately found a community that welcomed her, included her, and treated her as an equal with open arms. The students, residents, and faculty inspired her to rise even higher. Her passion for medical education was ignited at this time and never gave out. So what fueled Holly at this time? And I would suggest it was purpose with passion, rooted in compassion for the individual, sustained by a deep, deep sense of gratitude. And how did she live out that passion? She focused on the individual. Her devotion to the team, an extraordinary work ethic, all were shaped by these experiences. But Holly started with the individual. She was a rabid Green Bay Packer fan and quoted Vince Lombardi often. Individual commitment to a group effort, that's what makes a team work, a company work, and a civilization work. I'll give one example. There's many, 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 but every May and June, Holly would come home with a large stack of manila envelopes, the residence files, both incoming to welcome and outgoing to remember. She studied them for hours and hours, not to judge credentials, but to understand each person's story. She took copious notes. If she wasn't sure how to pronounce a name, she'd call someone and learn the name. She learned about their hometowns, hobbies, and interests so that when they met, she already knew them and their families. She always wanted to know not only about them, but about the people important to them. These were many weekends in May and June. And maybe because of that, she rarely forgot a name or her face. Decades later, residents would come up to her, former students, and run into her, and she would recall the smallest detail of their lives. I was always amazed. And when a student, resident, or colleague faced heartbreak or loss, Holly cleared her desk, cleared her schedule, and stood beside them, comforted their families, offered support, and if best, went to their homes. To her, they were not just trainees or colleagues, they were family. And from the individual, she championed the community as a whole. She tirelessly advocated for residents and students who were often marginalized and overlooked. She would lobby at the highest levels of the institution, fought for funding, reshaped curricula, and challenged unfairness. Yet I never once heard Holly refer to what she did as work. For her, every day was simply an opportunity to move the mission forward. But she could not do this alone. Her remarkably talented colleagues were not just co-workers, but a community of committed collaborators who shared her passion and purpose. Holly was inspired by her mentors, people of talent, integrity, and shared vision. Among her mentors included Larry Wood, Gene Geppert, Jesse Hall, Ken Polanski, Phil Hoffman, Pierce Gardner, Mark Siegler, and Harvey Gollum, and the list goes on. Her close colleagues and collaborators and friends, Helena Bruckner, Mindy Schwartz, Jim Woodruff, Monica Vela, Kimmy Carter, Vinnie Aurora, Mary Streck, Michelle Josephson, Patty Kurtz, Herb Abelson, all the chief residents, all of these people critical to her. All of you were the engine, the soul, the mission she cherished. This could not be done without strong administrative support, Her administrative partners, Kate Blythe, Candace Tate, Gerard Michaels, and notably Lori Orr, were her lifeline through many brutal challenges. At the heart of the administration was Dana Levinson. For nearly 30 years, Dana stood beside Holly as colleague, confidant, and dear friend. Her wisdom, humor, and steadiness carried Holly through many crises. She was a quiet force behind much of Holly's best work. Her presence in Holly's final days with us was a deep comfort to our family, and we'll always see Dana as part of our family. At the foundation of Holly's career stood Dr. Arthur Rubenstein, Chair of Medicine at the University of Chicago, and later Dean at Penn. Arthur saw something in Holly from the start and remained a steady presence throughout her life. From medical student to chief resident, program director, dean, and finally president of the Macy Foundation, he guided, encouraged, and he believed in her. Arthur was in every sense Holly's professional father. His wisdom, generosity, and kindness shaped her life and career, and I remain deeply grateful for his enduring influences and friendship. There are just not enough ways to say thank you to Arthur. So then, Holly's character was also deeply rooted as a child in her Christian faith. She had a quiet faith that gave her hope, empathy, and courage. She embraced the diversity, equity, and inclusion as reflections of the Jesus she believed in, and she believed that he gave his life for her and that she is now with him. But throughout her career, Holly never lost sight of the goal. It was always about the patient. Care rooted in compassion, defined by skill, and delivered to all with dignity and fairness. That was her passion. So, yes, Holly loved the University of Chicago. Though she left its halls, she never left its spirit. She carried it in her work, her values, and her heart. The gratitude never left her. Rabbi Shammai wrote in the Talmud, "I have learned much from my teachers, more from my colleagues, and most from my students." Holly was the sum of all of you. The kindness you showed her, the lessons you taught her, and the love you gave her. So in the end, Holly would simply say, thank you. She truly loved you. I was deeply grateful for each of you. And on behalf of Holly, our family, and me, thank you.
Thank you, Dwayne. Next, I would like to ask Dr. Kenneth Polonsky, the Richard T. Crane Distinguished Service Professor of Medicine and Senior Advisor to the President of the University of Chicago, to come to the podium. He closely worked with Dr. Humphrey when he was Dean of the Biological Sciences Division and the Pritzker School of Medicine.
Good morning. So I'm really honored to have the opportunity to participate in this event and to pay tribute to and celebrate Dr. Holly Humphrey, our exceptional friend and colleague. And I suspect that many of you felt the same as I did. It was a very emotional moment as I walked into the chapel this morning and saw this wonderful picture of Holly and imagined that she's here with us, which she obviously is in so many different ways. Now, I was very fortunate to be at the university throughout most of Holly's tenure here. I had the privilege of working closely with her and had front row seats as her career progressed, and we've already been through the progression, but I'll repeat it again, from medical student to medical resident, chief medical resident, fellowship, internal medicine residency program director, dean for medical education, and Ralph W. Gerard Professor of Medicine. A really extraordinary career. At each career stage, Holly's growth in confidence, stature, and experience was impressive. And as she became one of the most revered and admired leaders in medicine and medical education at the University of Chicago and also nationally and internationally. So this extraordinary career has had and continues to have substantial impact. For those of you who knew Holly at the outset of this career, the evolution was not at all surprising, and it became clear very early on that Holly was destined to do great things. There are common threads through all of these roles that, in my opinion, allowed her to be so influential. Holly's skill and compassion as a gifted and empathetic clinician enabled her to serve as a role model for students, staff, and faculty colleagues. Her unwavering commitment to providing access to medical care of the highest quality to all, particularly the most vulnerable, represents the highest aspirations of the medical profession and had a profound effect on all who trained with her. Holly had an unusual ability to connect with, inspire, and serve as an example to students and other learners at varying levels of their training. And this is another critical element in her success. Holly was an inspiring speaker. On a number of occasions, I followed her on the program of various meetings and events, and I always had mixed feelings about this. On the one hand, I loved to hear Holly speak. She always had something important to say, and the ability to say it in compelling ways. On the other hand, it was a real challenge to approach the standards set by Holly in public speaking. Holly also had an enduring commitment to opening doors for people who had previously been denied opportunity by creating a welcoming environment that eliminated bias, valued different cultures and backgrounds, and supported people with unconventional or controversial ideas and positions. Under her leadership, the Pritzker School of Medicine was one of the most diverse medical schools in the country, while at the same time being amongst the most selective, offering a superb educational experience and attracting the most accomplished students from many different backgrounds. These trends have continued under the leadership of Vinnie and Mark Anderson and are an enduring part of Holly's leadership at the University of Chicago. The inspirational impact of Holly's family on her career cannot be overstated. Whenever I would ask her, "How is the family doing?" her face would light up, and she would smile with great pride as she recounted something notable that had been accomplished by one of the children, Ben, Hannah, and Sarah. I know how much she depended upon the love and support provided by Dwayne, and the pleasure that she derived from her family was obvious. Holly deeply loved the University of Chicago and really enjoyed working here. When she decided to leave the university to be president of the Josiah Macy Jr. Foundation, she sent a wonderful letter to me in my capacity at the time as Dean of the Biological Sciences Division and Pritzker School of Medicine, and to the Provost's office. And I quote from this letter: "I wish to express my deep gratitude for the honor and privilege of serving on Chicago's faculty for the last 30 years. There are few things in life that have been more important to me and my family than my relationship with this great university. I have enjoyed the privilege of working with and learning from the very best colleagues, remarkable students, and dedicated residents in service to our patients and our community. I thank the university for the opportunity of a lifetime." Dr. Holly Humphrey trained thousands of physicians whose ability to achieve clinical excellence and serve as trusted and respected practitioners and leaders in their chosen fields has been enhanced by what they learned from her and by following her example. All of us who interacted with Holly personally and professionally were enriched by her warmth and generosity and exceptional professional standards. Her untimely passing in the prime of her career is a tragic loss, but she leaves a rich legacy to help guide us into the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. Next, I'd like to welcome Dr. Jim Woodruff, Dean of Students for the Pritzker School of Medicine, who's worked closely with Dr. Humphrey in that capacity. In addition, he succeeded Dr. Humphrey as the Internal Medicine Residency Program Director here.
Good morning. There's so much to say about Holly, but this morning I'd like to speak to her impact on the growth and development of residents. It was in residency that I first met Holly and became her mentee. Holly impacted me even before I moved to Chicago. I first learned of her as a fourth-year medical student at Columbia. In the summer of 1991, I was doing a rotation in pulmonary medicine and occupational health in the dairy lands of upstate New York. The two older pulmonologists with whom I worked gave me some advice. Go interview at the University of Chicago. There's someone very special there. They described a young and inspiring teacher who ran the internal medicine residency and who had risen to national leadership in academic medicine within the first few years of her career. I added the University of Chicago to my residency application list. Holly was not available on my residency interview day at the U of C. I first met her at the intern welcome. The event took place at Tom Jones's home, a beautiful Queen Anne house on Harper. I was standing around in the kitchen joking with my new colleagues, the interns. Suddenly, it dawned upon me that one of these interns was my program director. Holly had stole her way into our midst unnoticed, at least by me. This was a bit disconcerting. I stopped joking, stood up straight, and started using a plate for my hors d'oeuvres. As expected, internship was hard. My fellow interns and I experienced a huge range of emotions, from anger and frustration to fear and embarrassment. But with the guidance of Holly and a set of resident leaders she had developed, many of us began to see the beauty of our work, to feel the camaraderie of shared challenges, and to experience the exhilaration of growth and accomplishment. Holly's education leadership was special. While excellence was her goal, she had a larger idea of what that meant. She subscribed to the knowledge economy that is so important to academic medicine, but she understood that meaning in this economy is rooted in our humanity. Holly's behavior, almost without exception, was a reflection of a core set of values she was unafraid to show. She applied her very substantial intellectual talents in a manner reflecting deep interest in the needs of patients and house staff. When you as a trainee spoke, she listened. And more so than any other leader I have worked with, she heard you. Holly demonstrated what Iris Murdoch calls loving attention, an objective understanding of another person, unclouded by the distorting influence of the self. She offered advice about professional development and personal challenges, but never upfront. Your views and experiences were always the substrate for her measured counsel. It was offered with great humility, oftentimes tied to a story about her interactions with patients and her mentors. She could laugh at herself. I recall walking into the old Morning Report conference room one time where she was sitting with Brian Gelbach and Steve Weber. They were teasing Holly about some inspirational comment she had made. She was laughing so hard she nearly drooled. Her values-first approach was powerful medicine. This approach created greater space for the house staff to cultivate judgment and leadership. It tempered the cynicism that often comes with long hours and frustrating situations. In the depths of residency, it was possible to feel great admiration for her and each other, trust in ourselves and our teams, and gratitude for the training community she had created. It created greater resilience when the training community was confronted with tragedy, such as the passing of a resident or a faculty member. And it taught us to celebrate achievements beyond technical expertise. Holly was also a medical expert. She dissected pulmonary cases at Morning Report meticulously for learners at all levels. During her tenure as PD, program director. She and Arthur Rubenstein were the only attendings to preside over general or undifferentiated cases at our flagship clinical conference. They both served as teaching attendings on the general medical ward as well. I believe it was this combination of humanism and expertise that kept so many of our graduates here as faculty through the years. And while Holly cannot be given exclusive credit for this achievement, few would disagree with the statement that she was the departmental exemplar for medical professionalism and human compassion. Holly came with the added bonus of her family. During my training, Dwayne was one of the most sought after cardiology attendings in the department. No one could match his winning combination of teaching and entertainment. He remains one of the sweetest and funniest people I know. Sarah, Ben, and Hannah lived large in the stories Holly told the house staff. Their characters were most often brought out when the residents needed humor or a reminder that frustrations are a part of every meaningful relationship. Dwayne, Sarah, Ben, and Hannah, I'm sure I speak for generations of Holly's trainees in saying thank you for sharing Holly with us. We were extremely fortunate to have her as our program director, our teacher, our mentor, and our friend. She played a central role in our development as physicians and leaders, and we hope to represent her legacy faithfully in our work for years to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Next, I would like to invite 3 Pritzker fourth-year medical students, Stella Cho, Carolyn Montag, Shreya Sridhara, to perform the song Light of a Clear Blue Morning by Dolly Parton. Thank you, Stella, Carolyn, and Shreya for that beautiful performance. Next, I would like to ask Dr. Sarah Fullman, daughter of Dr. Humphrey and an alumna of the Pritzker School of Medicine and the University of Chicago Emergency Medicine Residency Program, to come to the podium.
Thank you all for being here today to celebrate the life of my mom. For nearly 40 years, the University of Chicago was more than just her workplace. It was her professional home, her community, and the place where she poured her heart, intellect, and energy into everything she did. Through her work as a teacher, mentor, and leader, she shaped the lives of countless students, trainees, colleagues, and patients. What's always struck me most was how deeply she loved the people who made up this institution. She often spoke of her students and colleagues with such warmth and pride, as if they were part of her own family. The relationships she built here were genuine, enduring connections grounded in mutual respect, curiosity, and care. The University of Chicago was not just where she worked, it was where she found her purpose, her people, and her joy. My mom's passion for medicine and helping others was rooted in humble beginnings. She grew up on a small dairy farm in rural Wisconsin where hard work and perseverance were a way of life. From an early age, she witnessed her younger sister struggle with complications of type 1 diabetes in a time when treatments were far less advanced than they are today. Watching her parents navigate financial hardship and the barriers to accessing good medical care made a deep impression on her and inspired her lifelong commitment to fairness, compassion, and justice in healthcare. Those early experiences shaped not only the kind of physician she became, but also the kind of leader she was. Her curiosity about her sister's illness sparked her love of science, which led her to medicine, and it cultivated empathy for those who were struggling and gave her a lifelong commitment to service. She believed that medicine should be a calling rooted in compassion, and she worked tirelessly to open doors for those who had been excluded or underestimated. She was a fierce advocate for equity and opportunity, especially for those who faced structural barriers in medicine. Whether she was mentoring a student, leading a meeting, or shaping institutional policy, she never lost sight of the human beings at the center of her work. She saw potential in people, often before they saw it in themselves, and she made them believe that they belonged here regardless of their background. Beyond her work, my mom cherished the simple joys that grounded her, including time with family. This time of year reminds me of our fall trips to Door County, Wisconsin, where we would go to the Pumpkin Patch Festival. We'd stop at Al Johnson's, the restaurant with goats grazing on the roof, and ride bikes through Peninsula State Park under canopies of red and golden leaves of autumn. Those weekends were full of laughter and warmth, reminders of her commitment to being present for the people that she loved. Those memories remind me of her joy, spirit, and sense of togetherness she yearned to cultivate, which she brought to everything she did. I had the privilege of becoming a student at the Pritzker School of Medicine shortly before my mom left for the Josiah Macy Foundation. I was able to witness firsthand the culture that she helped cultivate. The academic environment at Pritzker was one that embraced the Pritzker mission statement, which is centered on developing, quote, leaders and innovators in science and medicine for the betterment of humanity. She was so proud of the Pritzker School of Medicine, what it stood for, and the people who continue to carry its mission forward. I know my mom would want her legacy to reflect that mission. She would want us to lift up those around us, to mentor and support one another, and to never forget to be of service to our patients and our community. She would want us to amplify the voices of the marginalized and underserved. She would want us to pursue excellence without sacrificing our empathy or humanity. I think about her legacy and impact when I work in the emergency department. I realize how incredibly privileged I am to be in this position of service to the broader community. I feel pained by the incredible healthcare disparities that we see on a day-to-day basis and ask myself, what am I doing to make a positive impact? What am I doing to advocate for the marginalized and underserved? How am I working to improve systems and processes to better serve patients? My mother impressed upon me to ask these questions and constantly reflect upon how I can better be of service, particularly to those who need it most. Mom, thank you for everything you gave to your family, to your students, to your colleagues, and to the University of Chicago. Your life, your values, and your vision will continue to inspire us, guide us, and remind us of the profound difference one person can make. With a full heart of love, thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Next, I would like to invite Dr. Mary Streck to the podium. Dr. Streck trained with Dr. Humphrey, and they were longtime colleagues in the section of pulmonary and critical care medicine.
I knew of Holly before I met her. It was prior to the era of electronic medical records, at a time when we handwrote admission and daily progress notes. I had just arrived at the University of Chicago as a fresh internal medicine resident, trying to find my way in a new environment. Holly's notes were masterful, providing much needed guidance. They were clear in their delineation of the patient's prior medical history, active problems, and management plan. But what was most remarkable was how they conveyed the patient's social situation and essential humanity, and the elegant cursive handwriting with which they were so clearly and painstakingly written. That focus on the worth of every person, especially those who are at their most vulnerable, was a theme and through line across Holly's stellar career. Her many achievements and the success of her endeavors is remarkable, but Holly's ambition was driven by her moral vision that every person is worthy of respect and in the right circumstances could be inspired to achieve great things. She put the interests of her trainees, colleagues, patients, and this institution that she loved and served before her professional success. And she worked tirelessly to create the circumstances where everyone could have a chance at that success. This is what was truly remarkable and notable about Holly. As the internal medicine residency program director, Holly worked to address problems large and small and forge solutions that were practical, thoughtful, and effective. You were on service and had influenza. Please stay home until you're well. Your colleague was ill and there was no one to cover. A formal backup coverage system was created, which is still used today. Morning report was terribly intimidating, perhaps for some of us terrifying. Let's encourage the faculty to ask questions of the house staff in a less pointed fashion and create a warmer learning environment. Resident satisfaction increased and attendance at morning report soared. She was quickly both respected and beloved. Later, when she was Dean of Medical Education, it was my privilege to invite Holly to annually lecture the entire second-year medical class during the pulmonary section of clinical pathophysiology. The students were thrilled to have their dean in the classroom, and Holly taught with great enthusiasm, skill, and joy. She reminded the students that in addition to understanding the pathophysiology and treatment of a patient's disease, it was essential to consider the psychosocial impact of their illness. Holly emphasized that mastering the science is only part of our duty as a physician. She modeled medicine as a calling, where patients are comfortable placing their trust in you, thus more likely to heed your advice. Over the years, the writer of those carefully handwritten patient notes became not only a colleague and role model, but also a dear friend. She was a fellow member of the section of pulmonary and critical care medicine, where she continued to serve as guide and source of inspiration for me and many in our section. We watched her balance her increasingly demanding and successful career with her devotion to her enlarging family. It seemed a two-way street for us, as Holly and I were grateful to our thoughtful pulmonary and critical care colleagues who were generous in the coverage they offered during our maternity leaves and supportive as we returned to work. Even while devoted to career and family, Holly made time for friendship and joy. Along with Michelle Josephson and Helena Bruckner, Holly dreamt of reuniting University of Chicago medical residents from our era. Under Michelle's direction with Holly's connections, the reunion weekend was a celebration of the bonds of friendship and camaraderie from a defining time in our medical careers. Subsequently, Michelle coordinated dinners of the small planning group in Hyde Park, where we relived reunion memories and gathered to share stories about our lives and trade career advice. For everybody, it was a short walk or drive to dinner. Except for Holly, it was a plane ride from New York City. But we always look forward to her presence, where we continue to benefit from her experience and wise counsel. As Michelle recalls, when I encountered some professional challenges, Holly understood the situation perfectly, even better than I did. She provided me with honest and sound advice. She told me to keep my head down and focus on my work. As hard as it was at the time, she was right. In retrospect, we recognize how fortunate we were to have this gift of time with Holly. You too may be remembering treasured memories of being with Holly and the clarity and certainty of her moral vision, which was the underpinning for all she did. She used her positions of power with wisdom, empathy, and intelligence, and was effective in instituting systemic improvements in medical education. Though there is so much sadness at this tremendous loss, we are forever enriched and blessed by the joy of knowing one who shone so bright, wanting and working for opportunity for all she encountered, and her encouragement and inspiration to each of us to do the same and be our best selves.
Thank you, Mary. Next, I'd like to invite Dr. Abdullah Hassan Pratt to the podium. He is the Faculty Director of Community Engagement at the Pritzker School of Medicine. He is also an alumnus of the Pritzker School of Medicine and the University of Chicago Emergency Medicine residency program, and trained while Dr. Humphrey was Dean for Medical Education. Thank you.
Good morning. I'll try to work myself through this. For those of you all who I have not had the pleasure of meeting before, I'm Abdullah Pratt. One of the best descriptions of me that I could ever have would probably just be as one of her former students who comes from the very communities that she spent her career serving. My journey at Pritzker began prior to becoming even one of her medical students. It started in a nationally renowned Pritzker pathway program known as the Pritzker School of Medicine Experience and Research. I can remember the person whom I looked up most to, Bill McDade, introducing me to her, having prepared me in some corner by informing me that, hey man, this program would not be here if it wasn't for that lady, Dean Holly Humphrey. She was there the first and the last time I had the chance to spend time with Dr. Jim Bowman. And at Bowman Lectures, I knew for a fact, if it was one thing, that she'd be there and I get some lesson from her just by showing up, by asking a question. From those moments early in my career, I felt her warmth. She cared about where I came from. She already knew my weaknesses that I wanted to hide. And more importantly, she knew what strengths I didn't even know I had yet. This will actually be, the first time I've ever spoken without having heard the crowd about her. Many times I could look at Holly and just look and she'd give me a nod. She'd give that big smile. I could sense when I was running on a little bit too long. I could sense when I was hitting the right spot. And that was always warm because many times I felt like I was the smallest person in the room. I, as a student, before I even was accepted to Pritzker, had just submitted a thesis paper for my sociology minor in college. Having been challenged by the department chair at the time as a big football player from the south side of Chicago, she thought it would be important to my career as a physician if I wrote my thesis on women in science and academia. Once accepted to Pritzker, off the wait list, I may add, I can remember sending that essay to Holly after having sat on it for about 3 months at that point. And it had gotten a great grade, but I can remember sending it to her and in an astonishment of what I thought she had gone through in her career. Her approval meant the world. And despite me feeling that she was solely responsible for admitting me to Pritzker, I had no clue how impactful her journey in medicine had been on all of you all and so many more. Since that time, I've had the wonderful honor of going from referring to her as Dean Humphrey to Dr. Humphrey to Holly and ultimately to that lady. There have been countless instances at each pivotal journey in my career in which Holly just seemed to know how to come to the rescue. From my time As a student in the summer programs, all the way to my time like now as a junior faculty member, still trying to figure out my career, Holly is always helping. As a second year medical student, having just lost my brother to gun violence, couldn't believe it when she took the stage to essentially eulogize my brother, having only known him through my stories to prospective students that she forced me to say. She'd say, D, you gotta come tell them where you come from, how you got here. And that would be my assignment, to come to so many events that many times I didn't feel like going to, or I felt depressed about my brother's loss. She only knew him through those stories. When I would say, hey, it was my big brother. That's the reason why I made it. He was a tough guy. So I didn't have to be tough, that I love science and medicine because I didn't feel like I had to prove anything. And she knew what that meant coming from Chicago, South Side. I didn't. I didn't know I was valuable to them. I didn't want to be the person that detoured them from medicine. But she said, no, you get up and you talk to them. During the intense climate, fighting for a level 1 trauma center, what many people don't know is that Holly allowed me the grace to develop my ideas. I cringe. Jim, I cringe at how many times I would just burst into her office and be like, hey, in the middle of class, like after class, and say, hi, Dean Humphrey, this big thing just happened and this. And she'd sit there with a smile. She tolerated because I think deep down she just wanted to make sure I was okay. She really did. She said, hey, come on in here. And I could see that like there were meetings that needed to be happening and things like that. And Kate and them would be like, hey, D, some things going on back there. And I'd be like, no, I just got to really get in here. I just really cringe at the fact that she kept a true open door policy, even though I was probably breaking whatever policy it was supposed to be. As she left the university, I had one of the greatest honors of speaking at her farewell ceremony. It was entitled, my speech was entitled, Who's That Lady? Because I was learning about how impactful she had been to all of the people who were mentoring me, from Jim to Dr. McDade to Jeannie to everyone, to Lauren Dooch. I'm finding out myself. I just found it out today that the person who literally rescued me from failing and flunking out of medical school was also career started by Holly Humphrey. So every day, who is that lady who continues to be so impactful through so many others? I missed her, but I quietly and selfishly, just in those moments, cherish seeing her smile and her personality day in and day out, which is it. And if you know Sarah, you know that you learn more from her during a shift than I could ever probably teach her. So I focused on the warm aspects of advocacy that Holly sat and taught me from her very desk and office. As I close, a couple of years ago, facing tough decisions on feeling forced to potentially leave this institution in the only place I knew, it was Holly and Dana Livingston that came to the rescue. In her role with the Macy Foundation, hundreds, thousands of miles away, she found some way to still help. This culminated in my role, in the inaugural role as the faculty director of community engagement. And many of the Pritzker student-led works and organizations that you all see being spun out come from that very moment and would not be here without that time that she spent after she was my dean. Holly has been that lady, and I feel silly, super silly, that I thought I was special in my relationship with her. And that's the aspect of her legacy that I leave with students and residents to today, is that I want them to feel special every single time. But I know that she meant the same to all of you all. And I thank you all for that time, and I thank your family for allowing me that. Thank you, Holly.
Thank you, Dee. Finally, I would like to invite Dana Levinson, longtime friend and colleague of Dr. Humphrey, to the podium. Dana was the Associate Dean for Medical School Administration when Dr. Humphrey was Dean for Medical Education, and she continued to work with Dr. Humphrey at the Macy Foundation, where she currently serves as the Chief Program Officer. Dana?
Dee, I was in the room when you gave that aforementioned "Who is that lady?" speech. And Holly, as you know, hated being the center of attention. It made her, in her words, want to dive under the table. But she loved that speech, and she told me that it meant the world to her. So thank you for that. And I remember it. It was wonderful. As many of you know, I had the privilege of working closely with Holly for decades, first in the Department of Medicine, and then at the Pritzker School of Medicine, and finally, most recently, in the Josiah Macy Jr. Foundation. And it truly was the honor of my life. And it was an incredible privilege to have such a unique vantage point into how Holly thought and what inspired her, what drove her. And from watching her day in and day out, I know that what she achieved was by no means effortless. She was brilliant, yes, but she exemplified a work ethic and a drive for excellence unlike anything I have seen in any other person, unique even among the elite cohort to which she ascended. And I hesitate to call it simply a work ethic, because that phrase can suggest a focus on performance and achievement, and Holly was not performative. She cared just as deeply, if not more deeply, for process as she did for outcomes. And above all, she cared about doing the right thing on behalf of her students, her colleagues, her patients, and on behalf of this institution that shaped her. And she loved this institution deeply. And as it happens, I have illustrative examples. So I'm going to turn the clock back about 15 years, which doesn't seem that long ago to me, but forces were converging. A national economic downturn pushing hospitals towards specialized and highly remunerative care over community and primary care commitments. Growing pressure from national leaders to expand medical school class sizes in the face of a potential shortage of physicians, and within the university, pressure to increase tuition revenue to offset rising costs. And in the midst of all of this, the solution was simple for many, and they urged Holly, let's increase the class size. But she didn't just respond to those pressures, she began a thought experiment. And she asked a question, a simple question, but it seems not many people were asking this question. And it was, what resources of time, money, experience, and community are truly necessary to produce an outstanding future physician? And after a period of deliberation and dialogue with people that she trusted, she arrived at a formula. Education delivered by full-time University of Chicago faculty and clinical training conducted primarily here on this campus under their direct supervision to support the acquisition of the highest level of clinical reasoning. A curriculum also rich in scholarly experiential opportunities, an environment with readily available mentorship, advising, sponsorship, a compassionate learning community where classmates support each other, lift each other up, and a cohort of students reflecting the broadest range of lived experience and perspectives who importantly would graduate without the burden of overwhelming debt. And when she added that all up, that formula led her not to increase, but to reduce the class size by 15%. And it seems self-evident now that this was a brilliant decision because it propelled the medical school into a new status altogether. But at the time, it was met with intense opposition on campus and beyond, and even from the mentors who meant so much to her. But Holly stood her ground, guided not by expediency or popularity, but by principle. And that willingness to hold firm to her values in difficult and uncomfortable moments was one of her defining traits as a leader. Anyone who attended Dean's Council meetings with Holly back in the day will remember she could absorb a great deal of critical feedback with calm, openness, and grace, and for a period of time long past the point that any of the rest of us wanted to sit there. But many of her evolving beliefs about what makes a great learning environment came from her students and her residents, and she was proud to say that they mentored her as much as she mentored them. And this bedrock of her principle coexisted beautifully with an openness of mind. She was always evolving. She was listening, she was reflecting, she was adapting, and she did all of that without ever losing her moral compass. I was thinking of Holly recently when I was reading The Exceptions by Kate Zernike, which is the story of Nancy Hopkins and her battles at MIT to be recognized for the role of women in science. And in many ways, Holly was throughout her career the exception. She entered medical school at a time when a small percentage of the class were women. She became the first woman fellow in pulmonary and critical care. And as proud as she was of that, she fully understood that every time you hear that someone has broken a barrier as the first, it usually means that structural variables were in place to prevent it from happening before. And she spoke with deep gratitude about the men who supported and mentored her, those who stepped up to sponsor her career and to cover those clinical duties when she was on maternity leave during her training. But Holly also understood something really essential, that it is easier to support the exception than it is to make the systemic changes necessary to create an environment where everyone can thrive. And she honored those who opened doors for her by dedicating herself to challenging the structures that kept those doors closed to others. She was both a guardian of tradition and an agent of transformation. She revered the history and values of American medicine, often invoking Francis Peabody's quote that the secret of the care of the patient is in caring for the patient. And for Holly, medicine was a noble cause, rooted in empathy, humanism, and scientific excellence. But her reverence for its traditions never blinded her to its shortcomings. Rather, it inspired her to make them better. And one of Holly's heroes was another University of Chicago trailblazer, Dr. Frances Oldham Kelsey, who very famously refused to approve thalidomide for use in the US, even in the face of overwhelming commercial and political pressures, thus preventing what could have been a national tragedy. Dr. Kelsey credited her decisions to her University of Chicago education, which instilled in her a commitment to follow the data, base conclusions on robust evidence, and to fulfill the ethical obligations that science owes to the public. Holly was also trained in those great traditions of scientific evidence and ethical responsibility, and she brought that mindset to bear on her beliefs on what excellence in medical education and what outstanding learning environments should be. It was her trust in data and her commitment to ethical principles which led her to work towards transforming medical education learning environments by creating cultures of equity, diversity, and belonging that prepare future health professionals to care for diverse populations and address social determinants of health. And that, of course, is a quote from her induction ceremony at the National Academy of Medicine. She brought that same commitment to the Josiah Macy Jr. Foundation, where she helped foster priority areas for funding centered on teamwork, navigating ethical dilemmas, and fostering diversity, equity, and belonging. And a time when many commitments to ideals have ultimately proved to be performative rather than authentic, Holly's commitment was authentic and steadfast, even in the pressure to stand out. And she was an eloquent and inspirational speaker. But her true legacy lies in her actions, and the most important actions that I saw from her over and over was that she showed up. And this brings me to my final story, which is, in fact, the very last example of her dedication and her excellence in her life. Just 6 months ago, the Macy Foundation staff and faculty scholars were gathered for our annual meeting. Holly had entered hospice care, although none of us knew that at the time. And on our final day of the meeting, she surprised us all with a message by Zoom from her hospital room. I later learned from Dwayne that he had brought her clothes from her home, the red blazer, and that a nurse gently and lovingly applied makeup. And despite her pain and her exhaustion, she spoke for 10 minutes, expressing pride in the community that the scholars had built together, her belief that they were doing important work, her faith in their ability to bring about important changes on behalf of their learners and their learners' future patients. And the joy in that room was palpable, with people seeing her face and hearing her words. Knowing how much it would mean to everyone, she rallied to be there, to show up for as long as she could for the people and the work she loved. In the end, Holly taught us that leadership is not about titles, it's not about position, it's about presence. It's about showing up, especially when it's hard, and standing firm in one's values when compromise would truly be easier. And she reminded us that excellence is not a destination, it is a daily practice. I know that her impact on all of us is immeasurable and lasting, and I hope too, so will be her legacy on this campus. And with that in mind, Vinny, would you come up here, please? We have some important news that we want to share with all of you.
Thank you, Dana, for inviting me to join you. It's an honor to be part of this announcement and this ceremony. As we know, Holly cared deeply for the students at the Pritzker School of Medicine, and she had an unwavering commitment to ensuring that the medical profession, as you've heard today, remains open and accessible for all, both for the sake of the profession and for the public. Her own journey, as we have heard, was not an easy one. She did not have the benefit of generational wealth or family guidance to help her navigate what can feel like an intimidating and inaccessible path. And through her lived experiences and later through her leadership, Holly experienced and saw the impact of what she called the social determinants of education, those non-academic factors that can hinder a learner's ability to thrive here.
And so to honor Holly, her values, and to ensure that her extraordinary legacy as a teacher, as a mentor, and a national leader continues here on this campus, a place that she cherished so deeply, I am truly honored and very humbled to announce two gifts from the Board of Directors of the Josiah Macy Jr. Foundation. The first is a gift of $200,000 to implement the Holly J. Humphrey Transition to Residency Fund. And this fund will be used to support medical students at the University of Chicago who lack financial support to offset what can often be the prohibitive costs of applying for residency. And the second gift is a $1,750,000 donation to establish and endow the Holly J. Humphrey Scholarship for Medical Education, which will provide sustained support to students with demonstrated financial need, helping to remove barriers that can stand between our most talented students and the profession of medicine.
On behalf of everyone who has been touched by Holly's guidance and generosity, I want to express my deepest gratitude to the Board of Directors for the Josiah Macy Foundation for these transformative gifts to the University of Chicago Pritzker School of Medicine, where Holly served as a student, a resident, a chief resident, a fellow, a program director, and a dean. So many of us here and elsewhere were shaped by her wisdom and compassion. It is so deeply fitting that these gifts will ensure that future generations continue to benefit from her enduring influence and example. We are deeply grateful for the exceptional generosity of the gift, and we will continue to work tirelessly to realize one of Holly's dreams, to reduce debt and lower barriers for those students who might not otherwise have the means to train at Pritzker. Thank you. Thank you again to Dana and the Josiah Macy Foundation. I would like to close by thanking Dr. Humphrey's family, Dwayne, Sarah, Ben, and Hannah, for not just sharing her with all of us for all those years, but also for helping to advise and support this event, as well as all of you who have been touched by Dr. Humphrey's legacy and presence, for making the journey with us, including those who are watching at home. And then lastly, I know that Dr. Humphrey taught me that nothing happens without thanking the people that make it happen. And so I would like to thank the staff at the Pritzker School of Medicine, as well as the Rockefeller Chapel, especially Kate Bishke and Corey Schwans, for helping to support this event. Thank you. At this time, I would like to invite everybody who's gathered here to join us across the street for a reception at the David Rubenstein Forum City View Room on the 10th floor. Thank you so much.